Parker and I met at a track meet back in 2012. I was 15 years old. We were both hurdlers back in the day, and so we were lining up for this hurdle race, and there was a teammate of mine that Parker was like in competition with. He like came up to me and asked me, he said, "Hey, who's that?" And then I told him, and then I saw him and was like, goodness gracious, this is a nice looking gentleman. I just kind of stalked him a little bit over the next like season. And then kind of at each progressive track meet, I would be like, "So what's your name?" And then I'd see him again. I'd be like, "What's your last name?" And then I remember at conference, I added him on Facebook, and then he like accepted, and that was like a really big deal. But I didn't talk to him until like a few months later. Parker's version of the story is very different than mine.
I don't know what you guys heard, but we met at a track meet back when I was a junior in high school, and she was a freshman in high school. So the first track meet, I did go up and ask her. I'll let the record show. I was curious because there was a dude who she ran hurdles with, who I was friends with, and I wanted to know if he was at that track meet that day. I wanted to say I was friends with him. Mostly he beat me at every meet, so if he wasn't there, then I was gonna have a good time. And then the subsequent week, we had a track meet at York. The first one was at Fairbury, and the track meet at York, she definitely came up to me like a weird person and wanted to know who I was, and she asked what my name was, and so I told her a fake name. I told her she could just call me Kato from the Hunger Games because I didn't know why she was asking, and I was dating somebody else at the time.
And he had made a status change, and he said something about Skyrim, like the video game, like, is anyone playing Skyrim? Anyone want to play Skyrim or something like that? And so I knew the answer to this question, but I just was like, "Hey, like, what's Skyrim?" to try to be a really lame reason to talk to him. So essentially, I was kind of a stalker and weird, but then we kind of dated off and on throughout high school. Things happened. We didn't date at all for a while, and then I don't know, I ran into him at a movie theater when he was on a date with another girl. So he was standing right there, and we had to run into each other, and then he texted me that night, like I knew he would, and now it's like 3 years later, and we're getting married.
So we've dated a couple times. Our first date was 4th of July, and then that was 4th of July like 2012, and we went down to Fairbury, and I left a little bit later than I meant to.
And he ended up not leaving until like 1 a.m. that night. So we had like a 13-hour first date, which was kind of cool because we just talked about everything and anything. But it was also like I was 15 and he was like this cute older boy. So
we went around the flea market and looked at everything. We got snow cones, and then I went and met her parents, and we went and had, what was it, chicken fried steak, I think, at like some local diner. And that night we went and watched fireworks, and it was a really nice first date.
We held hands for the first time, and then it did end with our first kiss, which is a funny story in itself, because Parker chickened out and then drove away and then came back and then kissed me.
And then at the end of the first date, I drove away after dropping her off at home and walking her to her door, and I got a little bit ways on the road, and I was like, I probably should have kissed her. And so I drove back, and I went up, and she was waiting for me at the front door, and I kissed her. And then I went on my way, and it was super past curfew. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning when I got home.
The first time that Parker said he loved me was we were at a good old Concordia football party. And Parker and I are not wild, at least I'm not. And so we were at this party, we were a little bit isolated. I didn't really know anybody, and we were kind of just standing there like, we were talking to somebody, and we both kind of laughed and made the same joke. We
were in the middle of a conversation, and she made me laugh, and we both laughed at like the same joke, and I was like, "Hey, I love you," and she was like, "What was that?" And I was like, "No, nothing," and I realized it was probably, wasn't the most wholesome moment, but we talked about it later, and she said it back eventually, so that was good. So August of 2018, I asked him if he wanted to get dinner sometime, and then so I went down there to Fairbury, and we had a nice dinner and had a beer, and he took me out to the family pasture that they have down there. We sat on the tailgate, and we were just talking about life and more in depth from where I come from and where he's come from and their journey through life. And I kind of got the vibe that it was still a little bit too new in the relationship for me to ask yet, and so I heard his message and I was like, okay, we're gonna hold off and we're not gonna do it. And then so waited about 6 months, and then come December, I was like, hey, so could we maybe get dinner again sometime? And this time it seemed like we had been able to cultivate that relationship a bit more, and so we had some more background to us, and I had spent more time there in Fairbury. But yeah, we went down to, I think it's Legends Bar and Grill in Wilbur, Claytonia. We had a steak dinner and some scotch, and I asked him if he could, and he said I could, so I had already bought the ring, so if he had said no, it would have been a big disappointment.
So one night we were in Seward and we went to Cafe on the Square, and we were sitting there, and I think it was like January 10th or something. And I was just talking to him. I was like, I know we're not engaged yet, and that's okay. I think I just need a reframe of when you're thinking.
And she was like, well, I just don't know, because I told my friends I'd already be engaged and I'd have the wedding picked out, so I just want to know what's going on. I think I had the ring either in my car or in my pocket at the time, and I was like, I could just do it right now, but I knew she wouldn't care for that.
Parker was really reassuring, and he said, yeah, there's been some delays, and I'm really sorry, but don't worry about it too much. It'll be okay. And later I found out he had the ring in his pocket at the time, which if I would have known that, I probably would have smacked him. Because I was so, Parker's like, your face was just heartbroken. A few days later, I had asked him, I said, well, do you remember what the ring looks like? Did you have it yet? And he said, no, I don't have it. And I said, well, if you want to, we can go to the jewelry store tomorrow and we can look again.
She said, do we need to go back to the ring store tomorrow? And I was like, I don't think so. I think I'll get it figured out. She's like, well, we should make time just to make sure that's the one we want. And I was like, no, I think I'm gonna play Ultimate Frisbee tomorrow.
And he said, no, I don't think I'm gonna do that. And I was like, okay. And he was like, yeah, I think I'm just gonna go play Ultimate tomorrow. And I was so mad. I was like, are you joking? I was super pissed.
And at the end of that conversation, I think it ended with, well, it just feels like you're picking Ultimate Frisbee over me. And we got in a little bit of a fake fight that night, and I'm sorry that we had to have that fight, but it was pretty funny to know that we were fighting about nothing, and I had the ring the whole time.
I knew going up to the week that it was happening because he had gotten a haircut. He asked me if my nails were done. He wanted me to wear a dress. He wanted to go on a fancy date. And my mom was acting really weird. She was reassuring me that it would be okay if it didn't happen, which told me that pretty much the exact opposite.
Then a couple weeks later, I had asked someone from the church who plays guitar if he would come and sing our song, which is Green Eyes by Coldplay, where we were stationed at the coffee shop. That's her favorite coffee shop, which is Destinations. And Madison is a very classic girl, so she thinks that guys should pick the woman up and open doors for them and be courteous.
And he said, yeah, if you can meet me there before we go to Vincenzo's, that would be great. And he knows that that's my biggest pet peeve in the world. He needs to pick me up for stuff, any date, anything. I'm like, you better come pick me up.
And that day I was like, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make her drive to her own engagement so that I can really put her off a little bit before she gets proposed to. So everything was supposed to kick off around 7 p.m. And so around 6:30, I was like, hey, so is it cool if you just meet me at the coffee shop? And I didn't get a text back from her for 45 minutes. And she claims it's because she was doing makeup and getting her hair done. But she read that text because I bought her a nice little Apple Watch, and so I know she could see it. I
kind of got distracted watching the show and putting makeup on, and so I didn't text him back for 45 minutes, and apparently he was having a panic attack that I was just gonna not go to my own engagement.
I was in cahoots with her friends, and I got them to wrangle her down to the coffee shop, and she did not miss her own engagement.
So then I had Hannah actually drop me off at Destinations. So I get there, and he was texting me before I got there, and he was like, hey, they have a guitar player here tonight. And I was like, oh yeah, I know Destinations does music every once in a while. And so then I sit down and I have my coat on because it's February, it's super cold outside. And I have my coat on and I'm like, okay, our reservation's in 20 minutes, we need to get going.
I was very nervous when she sat down, and I pretended to do homework for a couple of songs that the guitar player did. But then when Coldplay came on, she immediately, her eyes lit up and she was like, is this it? And I was like, yeah, it's happening now.
Parker stretched, he went like this, and then his hand went like this, and this one was really sweaty, and this one he was reaching down for the ring. And so then he got down on one knee and he wrote this lovely little speech to say to me, and his sister Mary Claire put it on a card that she did calligraphy for it so I can keep it forever.
We had a few strategically placed extras, and they all got to see me propose to Madison.
most looking forward to is, I think, just the moment where I get to see Parker all dressed up. I know it's usually the other way around, but I haven't seen him in his suit, and I think just we're gonna have a first look before the ceremony, and I think just that moment of him seeing me in my dress and me seeing him in his suit, and just the feeling of like, okay, like we're here, we made it, it's gonna be okay. And then ultimately, just when I get to walk down the aisle, I mean, I'm gonna be a hot mess walking down that aisle. So, future me, if I'm not crying, I mean, I don't know how you did that.
Madison will not stop talking about how great she looks in her dress, and I am not allowed to see it. So I think one of the things I'm most excited for is that we can stop bringing up how great she is and then acting like I can't see it at all.
So I think for our marriage, I'm just excited to build Parker and I's home. We have some different styles and some different ideas about things, but I think just being able to like come home to Parker and to feel like we're creating our little family is really what's gonna be the coolest. Just to know that he's there for me and that I can make him dinner and he can do the dishes, and then we just get to like watch TV and hang out all day long, every day of my life. Like, that sounds great.
I think the thing that I'm most excited about with marriage to Madison is probably the balance between support and fun that we have, where so much of the time, if we're having a rough day, it's the other person picks up on it immediately, and we've gotten a lot better about finding ways to make a rough day better, but we're also not like the most serious couple, and so we also know how to laugh at the same things and make each other laugh, and just the balance there is something I'm really gonna enjoy. She has a really cute nose. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's adorable, and she has like these moments like throughout the day where she gets all sad and wants a cuddle, and then like, so if you do that for a bit, and then she'll be on to like wanting to get stuff done, and so then she'll get really motivated, and it's like she swings between a very can-do woman and a very cute little person who needs love and affection, and it always brings a smile to my face, no matter how ridiculous it is. I think how generous she is with her friends. She really wants to like bring her friends together and to provide a way for them to get to know and open up to her, and it's a very maternal sort of factor of Madison, and so I love that about her.
I love how strong I feel when I'm with Parker. I think I always feel like I can be whoever, I can do whatever bizarre thing I want to do, and he might look at me weird, but it's never, I don't feel like anybody can touch me. I feel like I'm kind of invincible, which is kind of bizarre because I never really thought that a person could make me feel that way. I love when he puts his guard down. I think something that I always think about is when my family first saw him for the more silly version of him than the kind of intimidating first impression that he sometimes can make. It's just when he is goofy and funny and lets his guard just fall is when people, including myself, fall in love with him.
Madison, I'm glad that you've been so excited during this whole process. It's a little worrying that you never had a second thought. So I don't even know if you're taking this seriously, but if you are, then I'm very excited about the rest of my life with you.
My dearest Parker, I can't wait to be your wife. I can't wait to start our family and to start our home. When I think about us in the future, I think about our blonde children running around. I just think about the different phases of life we're gonna get to go through together, and I'm so excited to make those memories and to just, I don't know, I love you. I can't believe I get to marry you. My 15-year-old self never would have thought I got to marry you. But here we are, and I'm gonna cry, so I'll talk to you later.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm
Madison.
and
Parker.
we
Are married.
yes. Hello.
Hi there. Also a tour. But yeah, so thank you so much for coming. I hope you guys are having a great time, that you can celebrate with all of us, and it means the world to us that you're all here. Please enjoy, eat food, chit chat, dance, eat more food. We have a lot of cake. My mom really excited about all the dessert options, so be sure to eat those up. And Bottom Theater popcorn from February, which is like the greatest thing that I've ever heard. So thank you so much for coming. I hope you have a good night.